So imagine leading with greater clarity, greater purpose, in more places, more often, and with more impact. Imagine. What would that be like for you? What difference would that make for you? How about the people around you? Leading more clearly, with more purpose, in more places. I believe it's possible. In fact, I'm convinced it's possible. Why, you ask? Because not only have I been able to do this with some degree of consistency, but I've also had the good fortune of working with thousands of leaders around the country to help them lead with more clarity, more purpose, and more impact more often. My mission for our time together today is to share some of that with you. But before I do, I'd like to create a little bit more of a context. The world that we live in is hungry for leadership. Your leadership, my leadership, our leadership. I think with very few exceptions, everyone in this room would agree that indeed the world we live in is hungry for leadership. But I'd like to start by getting a little more context and ask a question. With a show of hands, how many leaders do we have here today? With a show of hands. Okay, let me ask the question another way. How many people in this room have influence? That's more like it. Great. Okay, now that we've created that context, so now we have a room full of leaders. And let me just share with you that one of the greatest lessons that I've learned about leadership over the last 30 years is that leadership is a choice. And it has a lot to do with influence. And so based on the fact that we got 98% of you to raise your hand, I'll just assume that the other 2% are drinking decaf. And as a result, you'll be coming along with me just shortly. But I've got to create some more context. Over the last 25 to 30 years, I've devoted all of my career to exploring the vast realm of leadership with one key question in mind. Namely, what separates great leaders from all the rest? You can be sure that in 30 years of doing this work, I've learned a few things about leadership. You can also be sure that I'm going to be sharing a few of those lessons with you today. However, my time with you this morning is far less about me and far more about you. In fact, it's really all about you. So in my work with leaders all over the country, you can imagine that this topic of the distractions that we face is a front burner issue for many people. In fact, it's been a front burner issue for me for a pretty long time. It came to my attention perhaps 5 years ago that my life was a series of distractions, one after another, from the moment I got up in the morning till the time I went to bed. And I realized that if I didn't do something about it, if I didn't pay attention to it, I would be in a place where I wasn't able to lead with clarity and purpose, or more specifically, to be able to be the role model for the behaviors that I wish to see in others. Let me repeat that. I believe that leadership is a lot about being the role model for the behavior we wish to see in others. And when we're distracted, our distractions prevent us from doing that. Our distractions prevent us from being the positive role models that we're capable of being and that our teams and other people's in our lives deserve for us to be. As I said a moment ago, it's not unusual for me to hear this from clients. In fact, I often am amused by some of the stories I hear about just how distracted people are. And I'm reminded of one that I heard not long ago from a client who approached me after my program and said, "You've got to meet my husband. He's the most distracted human being you will ever meet." And of course, my first thought was, does he know you feel that way? But I said, okay, so obviously there's a terrific story behind this. Please share it. Well, she said that they had come back from their summer vacation, and like many of us, when we go away on vacation, we put the dog in the kennel. And so the husband came back, they came back from vacation, and the husband was so distracted that he went to the kennel and brought home the wrong dog. And it wasn't until their daughter, their teenage daughter, came home later that afternoon and said, what's up with this dog? Whose dog is this? That's not Coco. And then the husband, to his credit, said, well, I was kind of having a hard time getting the dog in the car. Maybe that's why. And I think that everyone here is asking that question. So how do we deal with it, Dave? What can we do about it? But I think there's a better question. I think there's another question that has to go before that. I think that question is why. Why should we do something about it? Why should we care? Well, I'm going to come back to the point I made a moment ago, and that is leadership is a choice. Every single one of us, every single day, has an opportunity to lead, to be the role models for the people around us, to set the tone, to set the pace, whether you have direct reports or no direct reports, or regardless of where you are in your career, regardless of whether you work or not. Every single person here is a leader. Every single person here has influence. And we begin to realize the truth, the reality that we all agreed to a little while ago, that in fact, the world that we live in is hungry for leadership, our leadership. That, I believe, is the call to leadership. I think it's also important to remember that leadership is the opportunity to be the role model for the behaviors we wish to see in others.